Hey, excuse me. Good morning, guys. It is June 8th, and Brian and I took a parenting class years ago, and one of the distinctions that we had to learn when we were it's really funny with parenting with the class. It seemed to be most of us had small children, and one of the things that we were constantly every week we were like, okay, when are we going to get into discipline, like how to rein in our kids, how to get them to do what we want them to do. And it was talking about more about leading and focusing their attentions and encouraging certain behaviors. And then eventually we got to the discipline, punishment, those kinds of things. And we tend to think this way because we want to just make things do what we want them to do. We think of kids like little machines, like, okay, how do I get my lawnmower to cut the grass? I start the engine, I engage the blades. How do I get my kids to do what I want them to do? Anyway, all that said, one of the things we learned was the difference between childishness and foolishness. And this is a really interesting distinction when you're looking at a child that is doing something that is apparently disobedient, but it's not always. Childishness is doing something that causes a bad result because of lack of knowledge. Um, there was no distinct command or rule that says don't do this or do this, and they do something that's just in in so many words, it's childish. And that means that they weren't defying an order, they weren't defying a command or a rule. They were just doing something that was basically dumb, that was not very well thought out. Foolishness is when a child knows the right thing to do because they've been told, and they choose to do the opposite or something different. And defiance is actually a kind of a gradient of that. Defiance is when you tell a child to do something and they immediately do something different. They do the opposite. That said, Chambers is dealing with Jesus' command to the disciples in John 13 after he tells them to wash each other's feet. And this is right before he is crucified. He says, if you know these things, happy are you if you do them. So blessed or happy are you if you do them. So once you know something, do it. Know it, do it. And so Chambers kind of really drills in on this, and he talks about in the first part, it's actually, he has a few different points here. In the first part, he talks about um, being getting outside of the settled waters, pushing ourselves out into the deep, pushing ourselves into places we've not been, and forcing ourselves to kind of have spiritual discernment, not with just the easy stuff. It's like a child that never leaves home or never goes to a friend's house or never does anything outside of the protective covering of their parents. Chambers is saying, hey, we need to get out into the deep waters. But then he says, when you know you're supposed to do something, when you know it, do it. Do it immediately. Don't hesitate. Because what happens is, and he goes into the second paragraph, he says, revise where you have become stodgy spiritually. Okay, find a place where things just kind of got mucked up. And you will find it goes back to a point where there was something you knew you should do, but you did not do it because there seemed no immediate call to. And now you have no perception, no discernment. At a time of crisis, you're spiritually distracted instead of spiritually self-possessed. He says a lot of times when we find ourselves in this kind of miry type of spiritual period of our lives, it goes back to a point where we knew we were supposed to do something and we didn't immediately do it. And then in the last paragraph, he kind of, Romans 12, 1 through 2, he says, it's easier to sacrifice yourself. It's easier to sacrifice yourself, do something grand, like some grand gesture, than to fulfill your spiritual destiny, which is in Romans 12, 1 through 2, which is offer your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So the daily sacrifice of our lives. Grand gestures are often a substitute for obedience. And he actually says that in this last paragraph. He says it's a great deal better to fulfill the purpose of God in your life by discerning His will than to perform great acts of self-sacrifice. Doing the great, grand, self-sacrificial things are often a substitute for just being obedient. You know what to do it. Um, this is, I think there's not a single person that wouldn't listen to this or read Chambers today that wouldn't say, okay, this is me. There are times when God has spoken to me, or I've just known, do this. This is what I'm supposed to do today or in this moment. And when I haven't done it, I realized, oh, that created this mire, this muck in my life. So I would encourage you guys today to be really just diligent to listen and obey. Have a great day.